All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my guides. So I'm going to come in here and let's kind of move this off to the side. And because I don't want to trace over it and I do want to give myself any measurements that I need on the width-wise as well as the height, I am also going to place one up top here. Now, one thing that I see people doing that I think is not great is they work really far away from their reference. And so they'll come in here like this and they'll look at it and then they'll like move over here and then they'll come back over here and they'll look at it, right? You really want to be able to see right up close. And so one of the things that I like to do is if I'm working on this part of this thing, then I'm going to isolate just that part. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I'm working on this lug, I'm going to take this, I'm going to make a copy of it. I'm going to put a shape right over the top of that, grab both of those and press Command 7. And now I have just that thing and I can put it right next to where I'm going. When you're dragging stuff around, it's really helpful to hold Shift so that it's always on an X or a Y axis from where the reference is so that you can keep your measurements correct. But that's something that's kind of helpful. So let's get our general ideas going here. I'm going to press Command R to bring up my rulers. I'm going to move these over and make these significantly smaller. Font size. How's that? Better? That's better. Okay. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to drag rulers down and get my basic main measurements. So if we look, we can always go in and press Command colon. But if we look here, I've got the highlight of the inside of the face, the shadow that's cast from the case, the midtone value before the highlight, and then a darker value, and then the main thing, and then I run into another edge and another cast shadow again. So technically there's like 9 to 12 different circles there. I'm not necessarily going to throw down a guide on every single one of those because it becomes a little bit, your guides start getting in your way. I'm going to go into View Guides, Lock Guides. Okay, and now I can't accidentally do this. And then sometimes it's useful to have all your guides on a different layer. And you can have guides of specific parts on different layers as well. So right now I'm just going to go Case Guides. And then I can turn them on or off. I can turn all guides on or off by pressing Command colon. I can turn specific guides off by hiding or showing that layer that they're in. Okay. So let's get the bottom of these circles that we did. Something like that, and like this, and like this, okay? And remember how the ellipse tool works. We don't need much else other than the left edge of any of those ellipses because we're gonna pull these ellipses from the corner. And I'm gonna make a pretty big assumption, but that assumption will help me out quite a lot. I'm gonna assume that all of these are perfect circles. And the reason that I'm going to make that assumption is because people won't really notice if they're not, and it'll make your life a lot easier. So I'm just going to start, switch here, and I'm going to lock my reference down for the moment. And let's label this case. And this is the case, the metal part on the outside of the face of the watch. And so I'm going to get here and here. And then I'm going to pull down and hold Shift, and I'm just going to hit that bottom. Okay? And then I'm going to get a general idea of the local color. Now you can start at midtones and then add highlights and shadows. You can start at highlights and then add midtones and shadows. You can start at shadows and then add midtones and highlights. Whichever one makes the most sense to your brain. For me, watercolor is one of the most confusing things ever because in my brain, you have to work it backwards, like you have to work from highlights first. And so I think darks first. So anyway, I generally, when I'm doing this, I generally will work with like the midtone value and then add highlights and shadows to it. And so the midtone value on this seems to be like right about here, right? And you can check your color. And this photo has been doctored. And so if we look at this, you'll see that the saturation is at 0. And we know scientifically that gray, perfect white, perfect black aren't real. And so because this is red, I'm going to mix in 1 or 2 percentages of a red. And that might be a little bit much. So come off of that just a touch. Okay, it's going to give it a tint and a hint of realism, right? If your grays aren't pure gray, it'll look more like people's actual experience, and people will assume it's more like a photograph. So even though I'm eyedropping something that is a pure gray in the computer, I'll add in a little bit of a hue. And when I say a little bit in this case, I'm talking 1% saturation, right? So just a touch, but you can see the difference, right? Huh? The hue up here. And so wherever I move this hue to, you'll notice that the saturation changes to show where I am on the color wheel.
Oh, okay, so you just put it to where red starts showing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm just guessing on a red. Down here it does seem to have a little bit of color, so I could grab this, and it looks like this is also red. It looks like this is a darker red. But that could just be because I tuned it to red. So, all right, I've already got a problem here with my reference. There's like a little thing, so I'm gonna come back and I'm just gonna mask out my reference. So let's grab this and zoom out just a little bit, and I will draw a little shape. Make sure I'm not cutting anything off that I want to see. And then we'll grab both of these and Command 7. Okay, then I can lock that back down. Okay, questions so far? We've made 1 circle. Hey, it's exciting. All right. Okay. Okay, so let's go a little bit faster here. And this is where I'm going to start looking at stuff. You'll notice I haven't used any gradients yet. I'm going to hide my guides in a minute because the green of the guides is really throwing my eye off to be able to tell what color things are. And so I'm going to use them to measure some things. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this guy. And because I know that this is going to be a main thing, I'm going to label it just now. And then I can Command C, Command V. You'll notice that it looks like nothing happened, but that was, sorry, Command C, Command F. We'll paste that directly in front of whatever I just selected, so it's exactly on top. And now if I shrink this down and I'm holding Alt or Option and Shift, it'll stay a perfect circle and it'll pull towards the center rather than pulling towards the corner, okay? And so now I can come in and I have a general idea of my this one. So main face. And that's not quite where the face is because it's really right there. So I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger. And again, Alt and Shift. Okay. Now that gives me my general measurements. Okay. And I might, just to save myself some hassle, I might actually separate out my face and my case on different layers because that way I can hide and show, I can lock, you know, and those types of things can be really helpful. So for the time being, I don't really need my guides, and so I'm just going to turn those off. I can always turn them back on, Command colon, right?
Would you say making a whole layer for like each thing is a good idea?
However you want to do that. For me, having things into layers is better than having things into groups most of the time, because if I want to work with a group, I'm going to have to go into isolation mode or ungroup it to select individual things. Whereas layers, I can just come in and I can click and drag and lock a bunch of layers or click and drag and unlock a bunch of layers. So layers I find to be easier to work with than groups most of the time. All right, so let's look at a couple of these things. I'm going to actually so we've got this. One thing that I need to figure out is where the center of this is. And so I'm going to hit the center of that, and let's scroll up a little bit, and we'll hit the center of this. Okay, I'm already finding something annoying about this, and that it's that I have to scroll to see it. I might fix that in a minute. But this is going to give me my center, and if I check that, the center dot of my circle should be at the crossroads, and I'm a pixel to the left, so that's pretty good. Okay, what do you guys want me to work on? What would be the most helpful right now to kind of show you after I get basic shapes down?
I think someone wanted to know how to do the rotation
Rotation, yeah. Okay, good. So let's throw,
of the multiple.
yeah. So let's throw a guide right down here, okay? And I'm going to look at just this part, okay? And so I'm going to unlock my reference here. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to make a copy of that, and I'm just going to hit right here with a shape, and then I'm going to Command 7, and we're not going to trace over this, but I'm going to put it close enough to where I can see what's going on. Now this is something I see students do that drives me absolutely nuts. I now have an object behind something. I've actually seen students do this many, many times. Just kind of like throw things out of the way to get to it. And it's like, don't do that. You put that there specifically, right? And so here's two things that you could do. One thing, Command Y. Okay, Command Y gives you outlines, and then you can grab individual things like that, right? If that doesn't work, then I could grab this one, and I could go Command 2, which will lock it, and then I can go here and Command 2, which will lock it, and then I can grab this, and those are locked, so they're not going to move, right? And if I want to unlock them, then Command Alt 2. Okay, remember if the hotkey is Command and a number, to undo it is going to be Command Alt that number. If it's Command and a letter, then it's going to be Command Shift and that letter to undo it. So okay, so I've got my guide here. I know where the center of this is. I'm going to come in. We're going to zoom in way too much, and I'm going to work on this. So I've got the top of that. I'm going to come down and get the bottom of this. Now it's missing a pixel on the corner. So I am assuming that means that it's kind of this shape. It's gonna have the corners cut, and the most logical thing would be that they're cut at a 45. So I can come in here like this, and right, we'll kind of. I'm assuming that the corners kind of look like that, right? So let's get our height and width here. Yeah, go ahead.
Why would you assume that they're cut more than like rounded?
Could be rounded too.
Okay, so it's just kind of like up to your discretion.
Yeah, I'm sort of going off of the idea that these are most likely, and the other thing is you can kind of zoom out and take a look at it, and you can see what you think. To me, at a distance, it looks like a flatter top than a rounder top. But to be certain, you could do the 45s and then round the corners a little bit so you don't have those sharp edges. And you can have sharp edges inside of a watch under the glass. You typically don't have sharp edges outside on the outside of the watch because you'd cut yourself or your clothing. And so it's just an educated guess. To be honest, and it's going to be so small that it won't really make that big of a difference. I'm going to turn my guides off here, just so I can deal with these, and that's going to give me the width and the height. So let's go. I'm not going to do with the shadow right now. Okay, so I'm just going on the outside, and let's get the width, and then we'll bring that over and get our height. Okay, so that is how tall and wide this particular thing is. So I could very easily just kind of come in and say, you know, round it, and it might look okay, right? And maybe we'll just start with that just because it's quicker. But as I'm looking at this, one of the things that you're going to have a problem with is your ability to see color, which includes brightness and saturation and hue, is going to be based on what's next to that thing. And so if I came in here like this and I showed you this, let's do be black and be almost white. And let's blend these together. And object blend options. Let's go specified steps 3. Okay, and then let's do the same thing in the opposite. And so let's make this one that color. And then we'll make this one. Actually, yeah, we want to do that. So let's go up and then down, and then we'll make this one this color. Okay, and then let's blend and object blend options. I should have done this before I did the blend so that I don't have to do it twice. And then, oops. Let's be smarter than the computer and just copy this up and then change the thing. So what you're looking at here is it seems like this isn't as dark as this, right? It seems like this is a little bit lighter. It seems like this is brighter than this is, but it's just because of what's surrounding it. And so you need to, don't work like this. Like give yourself a rough estimation of what is actually behind that stuff. Because if I'm working on this gray on white rather than this gray on a similar red, my brain isn't going to be able to see all the stuff that's going to help give me that nuance.
Is there a way to pull colors from the actual picture?
Yeah, so you can pull colors from the picture, but be a little bit careful because as you look at this, if we zoom in, you'll notice that this is shifting a little bit purple, this is shifting a little bit orange, this is shifting a little bit washed out. And so you're going to get different colors based on where you do the eyedropper. And your eye is not going to look at a single pixel. And so it kind of gets a general idea of what's going on, whereas the eyedropper is going to get a very specific idea of exactly where you clicked. And so clicking with the eyedropper is a great way to start. And then I would go in with hue saturation in your color panel. I would go in and say, it's a little bit warmer, it's a little bit cooler, it's a little bit less saturated, a little bit more saturated. You can kind of just slide those around to kind of dial it in a bit. But eyedropping the color from the watch is a good place to get you in the ballpark of where you need to go. All right, I don't need that, so I'm going to lock it. Okay, I've got this. And I promise I'll show you the thing that you asked in a minute, but I'm going to get this a little bit started. And the reason that I'm going to get this kind of started is because I don't want to do this 12 times. But as these move, the light is going to react to them differently, right? But you're probably going to have the same number of shapes or close to the same number of shapes. And so if I can get all of those shapes in this one, then I can rotate them around the circle, have 12 of them, and then adjust each one rather than create each one from scratch. And so I'm just going to go kind of fast here. Okay, so the first thing is I do see a bit of a gradient here on this shadow. I'm going to do myself a favor and I'm going to use 2 different shapes because it's very dark right next to the object and then there's a quick fall off after that. So I'm just going to come in, copy, paste in back. I'm gonna turn this black. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. And it looks like it's mainly on the sides. And then I'm gonna go to Effect, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Okay, and we are down to not a lot. So I'm just gonna kind of tighten that up like that. And then I can continue to adjust it. And then I can go copy, paste in back again. And I'm gonna give myself this fall off. And this is where I can come in to the appearance panel and click on Gaussian Blur. and I'm going to blur it a little bit more. Okay. And I'm going to blend it. So because I'm dealing with a shadow, multiply or overlay is going to be the way to go. And I'm not seeing a lot of difference between those. So let's drop our opacity a little bit. Okay. And I like the tone there, the value of it, but I feel like it's it's too wide. And so I can do one of two things. I can go in and I can tighten this up again, hit the appearance panel, hit Gaussian blur, and tighten up that blur a little bit. And then I can also come in and adjust the width of it. Okay, and this one is looking like it's a little bit more on the one side than the other. So I'm going to just kind of bring that over a little bit. Okay, now that's looking okay. I'm seeing this sharp kind of edge on the side. Okay, and there's a couple of different things that I could do with that. I'm just going to go in with this, and I'm just going to go to Object Path, Offset Path. And the trick for offset path is you want to make sure that your rulers are set to pixels and not inches or millimeters or anything else, because you want to be able to just press the up and down arrow keys and get a pretty decent size. I'm working pretty small, so that's okay there. Okay, and then I can leave this, and it looks like I've got kind of like a brighter side here, and then in the middle it gets a little bit darker. I'm seeing kind of a teal here, a purple here. There's kind of a big green here. There's a red here, and then there's a green up here. You guys can see those colors? Okay, so we're gonna kind of like start doing those in, and then I'm gonna crop some stuff. There's a little bit of a spillover of a highlight on the top here, and so underneath this, maybe on top of this shadow, I'm just gonna create just a circle like that. I'm just gonna make it a white, and then I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna go to Effect Blur, Gaussian Blur, okay, and let's blur that out. Now, my effects are kind of pixelated, so I'm going to go to Effect, Document Effect, Raster Settings, okay? And I'm going to change it from screen to 300 ppi. That's very important. I'm going to do that one more time. Okay, Effect, Document Effect, Raster Settings, and change the resolution to high, 300 ppi, okay? You'll notice I don't have little squares anymore, okay? Now, that's not what this looks like. And so it's probably some blending. So I'm going to try screen, which doesn't seem to do anything, and overlay, which makes it a little bit brighter and kind of gives me some of the stuff that looks like this, but that's not exact. So I think I'm going to go back to, let's try soft light. No, hard light. Hard light might be it. And then I'm just going to drop this down a little bit, and then I can reduce the size of this and kind of mess with the location shape. I can even go in and go copy, paste in front, and give myself another version of that to kind of tighten that up. And I'll take the blur off of that just to give myself kind of a little highlight on the inside. Okay, so that's looking good. Just outside of that, there's a little bit of a shadow. So I'm going to lock that top one by pressing Command 2. And I'm going to bring this one over, boop, like that. And let's change the whole thing to black. Okay, and I'm going to elongate that a little bit and rotate it some so we can kind of move that in. And let's change that to a multiply. That's looking all right. I'm going to grab the same thing, and let's just put this over the top here. It's already got the effect on it, so we don't need to do anything with that. And this looks like a kind of a sea green. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to dial that in until it looks all right. And that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit greener. Okay, there's a little bit of red over there. So I'm going to copy paste in front. Kind of move that over. Let's drop this to a red. Notice I'm just casually kind of coloring that. That red kind of spills over. And so I'm going to put my green on top. So I'm just going to Command left bracket to kind of do that. So that's giving me some of that. That's looking a little bit better. This red here is it's too much. And so I'm going to leave the color and I'm just going to drop my opacity down. It's a very small hint of that color. Okay. Then I've got kind of a purplish that runs down the whole thing. So I can just grab that whole thing and let's just make it taller and tighter, right? And we'll kind of give ourselves some of that. Uh-huh. You think I'm making up colors?
I only see like some green and red.
Yeah, if you look close enough, you'll see this is a purple. This is a little bit of a green. This is a little bit of a pink. This is kind of a washed out crimson maroon.
So like, do you want us to go pixel by pixel?
Do you want us to go that detailed with color?
I want it to look photorealistic.
So yes.
So
So
yes.
yes.
Oh,
okay.
Are you gonna do this for each notch, or are you just gonna copy them?
Yeah, good question. So I'm doing this on the first one because the other ones are going to be different, but will probably have the same number of shapes. And so once I get this the way that I want it, I'll copy the whole thing all the way around, and then I'll look at each one and make whatever color and lighting adjustments I need to make without having to create everything a second and a third and an 11th and a 12th time.
This is due next Saturday, right?
Yep. This probably seems pretty overwhelming right now.
Very. But we got it.
Don't worry.
One little tick on the watch.
Yep. Don't worry.
But I think
Be happy.
You guys will do great.
kind of with the icons, there's like certain things you do to make it look like an icon.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like maybe this, like going so detailed with these colors in one little stick, is probably what makes it more photorealistic.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, so now I've got a bunch of things. This is, a lot of people ask me, like, when do you name your layers? I name my layers when they annoy me, right? And so I have no idea what's what right now. So I'm just going to go through and name some layers. This is going to be 12 shadow. Okay, and this next one is tight 12 shadow. And it doesn't matter what you name them as long as it makes sense to you. And this is the one I was looking for. This is my main tick. Okay. And since I'm here, this is going to be tick inside. Okay.
But I've tried to click like on the layer and then click like the circle, and I don't know the difference between like highlighting the layer. See how one's highlighted right
So if
now?
I highlight the layer, it'll highlight everything that isn't locked, and that's by hitting the circle next to this. If I highlight an individual shape inside of that layer, then you just hit the next to that. Is that your question?
Can you say that again? Yeah, it's like
Yeah, so if I want to highlight everything, I do the one that's next to the whole layer, right? And that'll get everything that isn't locked. If I want to highlight just an individual layer, then I'll just click on the individual layer or click on the individual layer. And it'll show that this and this are also highlighted because it's just showing like there's something highlighted inside of these. So there's a slight size
when
difference.
you mean highlighted, you mean
Selected.
selected?
Yeah.
So like what's the difference between like, see the blue highlight across one of the things? Like just click.
Oh, yeah,
on
yeah.
the dot.
Yeah, that's a different, that's,
That means.
sorry, that's, you've highlighted that object, but not selected that object. And so it's not selected with your selection tool, it's selected inside of your layer. And so if I were to hit the trash can at this point in time, it would delete what I have selected inside of the layers panel. But it's not selected in the same way that you select something with your black arrow tool or your white arrow tool.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so now that I've got that, I got a little bit distracted. Let's go back into this and let's get our main tick here. Okay, and I am going to do a draw inside with this, which is going to make it so that I can put stuff inside of this that doesn't spill out. And then I'm going to get, let's turn this off really quick. Okay, so I've got my draw inside, and I'm just going to show you what that does really quick. So if I go like this, and that is like a bright yellow, you'll see that it's masked, it's clipped, right? So that technically creates a clip group with that object. And so you can start to come in and do stuff really quickly. And so I'm just going to come in here like this. I don't necessarily need to blend anything right now because this is so small and this is 1 pixel wide. I'm just going to, now this is a good example. Notice how I clicked right here. My eye is showing me something totally different than what my eyedropper is getting. So I can keep clicking and then I'm going to dial it in, right? Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, it's still a little bit lighter than that. And it's a little bit less saturated. And it's a little bit more here. Okay. And then I can come over. What's that?
How do you flip something?
So the way that I just did it,
Inside thing?
the way that I just did it was draw inside, and it's at the bottom of your layers panel. Sorry, it's the bottom of your tool panel on the left. And you can press Command D, Shift D, and Shift D will toggle you through the 3 modes. The one that you're looking for is draw inside. The normal one is draw normal. And then after that, you'll get things like draw behind. And I'm going to throw this. And this looks like it's a version of that. And so I'm just going to grab that and then lighten it up. Desaturate it a little bit more. Okay, so we're looking pretty good except down at the bottom now. And so I'm just going to throw a rectangle down at the bottom here, and let's lighten that up with that. And we might shift that over, let's see, and then up at the top, it gets a little bit red as well. And so this one up at the top seems to stop short a little bit, about like that. And I might even come in and just round out that one corner. I'm not seeing the same thing over here, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab this guy. Okay, Command 2 if something gets in your way. And let's pull him over.
Command 2 does what?
Command 2, if you select something you don't intend, Command 2 will lock that thing.
Okay, cool.
When you say photorealistic, do you want us to capture the raster
No.
vision as close as possible?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I'd rather it look more like a what we see with our eyes rather than what the camera captures. So yeah, I'm not necessarily doing pixels here, and I'm gonna show you kind of what I mean by that really quick. So if you hit Y, it'll bring up your magic wand tool, and you can grab things within a specific thing. So it's all the fill colors that are like this, or all the stroke colors that are like that, or all of the opacity, all the stuff that has the same opacity. And so I'm gonna go with a tolerance of 20. I'm gonna see how many of those things I can grab, just because I want to lock them. Okay, all right. Okay, so now let's grab the stuff that's inside of this, and I'm just gonna give it just an ever so slight blend. And I have to go find it. Oh, it's this clip group. Okay, so this is my tick detail. Okay, and I'm gonna start grabbing some stuff. So let's see if we grab the whole thing. Good, but I don't want the main tick because that is I don't want that. I want that shape to be hard. But the rest of these, I'm gonna add just the ever so slight blur, Gaussian blur, like barely anything on it, just to soften it up a little bit so that we're not doing kind of those little pixels. Okay, now that's what it looks like. And as I zoom out, we're pretty close, right? We're pretty close. I think we could use some more shadow at the bottom, you know, and some of those types of things. But generally speaking, I'm good with this. So I'm going to unlock everything, Command-Alt-2, okay? And I'm going to get rid of this, okay? Let's move this over, and I'm going to grab all of this stuff and not this, okay? And this time I am going to group it just for the time being because of what I'm about to do. So let's turn our guides back on. Do you guys have questions? I'm hearing questions.
We're just highly impressed.
You're having what?
We're just highly impressed.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry.
Good to know.
That's a better.
You guys,
I'm terrified.
you can do it. You could do it.
Do you have any notion of how long an average student, no pros, like an average student takes in this project?
When I ask you guys at the end of the 2 weeks, what I usually get is between 15 and 25 hours over the course of 2 weeks. So you guys will be able to go faster than I'm going now because you're not explaining it to everyone, right? And so this is taking me a while because I'm like, it's like fighting somebody when you're calling out all of your moves, Hadouken, right? And it's like, it takes longer to do that. So I could go a lot faster, but at this point, that would probably be way more intimidating than what I'm doing. So you'll get faster is what I'm saying. We want 12 marks, right? So we're going to go 360 divided by 12, and we'll hit copy. Okay? I'm going to do that again because that was the question that originally kicked off this 30-minute thing. Okay, is with it selected, and this time I grouped it because I want it all to move together, right? And so it makes sense to group it. So in fact, I'm even going to move this to another layer, the whole group, just so that I can have that to deal with. So I've got this whole group, okay, inside of this layer. I've got that.
All in one layer, could you do that to the whole layer?
Do what?
The rotation, and would it all?
You could. The problem is that because they wouldn't be grouped, I'm kind of curious on how that would work actually. My concern is that you might end up with a single layer that has all whatever, I don't know how many objects we have in here, but it would have like all 20 of those objects times 12 all in one layer. So grouping it puts all 20 of those objects into one, so you'd only have 12 groups instead of 120 or 240 layers in the one layer or whatever. So you could. I'm going to go like this, and then I'm going to hit R. That brings up my rotate tool. Okay, I've already marked the center of this watch, and so I'm going to Alt-click right here. I missed, so I'm going to do this one more time. I moved it just a little bit, so Alt-click. Okay, and then I'm going to go 360 divided by 12, and I'm going to hit Copy, not OK. Okay, and when I hit Copy, not OK, then it copies that over, and I can go like this. Okay, and I'm close now. Right? So I've spent all that time making the one, and you'll notice that like this specular highlight isn't there as strongly. And so I can come in here and I can start messing with just this, right? Or
Rotate again?
yep.
So there's like a lot of steps. You have to like click the center
And it's in the worksheets.
Okay.
So you guys can always go back to the worksheets, okay? But I've got this one thing, okay? And I'm going to hit R to go to my rotate tool. Alt-click right in the crosshairs, okay? And that just gives me this, and I can drag this around to rotate it any number of degrees. I don't want to do the math in my head, but I know that I want to move each one 1/12 of a circle. So a circle is 360 degrees, and a 1/12 of that is going to be divided by 12, right? And then I click copy instead of OK, because OK will just move it, but copy will move it and copy it. Okay? Then I'm going to press Command D to just duplicate the last step that I did. Okay? And if you want to come in and name these correctly, that's not a bad idea. But depends what you're doing. So I could come in here like this, and I'm going to grab 11 here, and I'm going to ungroup it, because that way I can deal with each one of these things by themselves. And this is where I'm going to take my little viewer here, and I'm just going to move over to look at the one that I'm looking at, so that I don't. And I'm going to move this on top. So let's go like this, and then I'm going to put this here, and then I will right-click, arrange, send to current layer, and then we can put it on the top. Okay. So now let's zoom in on this, And I broke my rule by not holding shift, so we'll just kind of do this around. So as I'm looking at this, I see a little bit more red here, and so I can come in with my white arrow tool and I can grab this guy and I can just kind of like shrink that down. Maybe make it a little bit more red. Right. I see a little bit more green in the middle. I see a little bit less of this highlight. And so I'm going to grab that highlight. I'm just going to delete it. I'm going to grab this one here, and I'm going to lower the opacity of that one. And I'm going to come in, I moved my thing. So this is where locking all of the other layers that you're not working on is a good idea. Got to make the noises or it doesn't count. Okay, then we'll come in here like this. I keep grabbing that one, so I'm going to Command 2. That's not the one I want. I don't want that one. Okay, that one I already did. That's the one I want. Okay, and I'm looking over here. It's a little bit brighter, but just barely. I could delete it, or I could just lower the opacity of it. And since it probably gives me some kind of value, I'll just kind of just knock it back. Okay, there's a little bit more green at the bottom here. So I'm just going to kind of pull this out. And let's increase it. Not that much. A little bit. And then there's a little bit of red down at the bottom there as well. So I'm just going to pull that away to allow that red. And it is less shadow here and more shadow up here. So I can grab this shadow and kind of just pull that up. Let's grab, where's my shadow that's underneath it? Those are ellipses, tick detail, shadow. There we go. Just going to kind of pull it up a little bit more. Still down at the bottom. It's kind of a weird thing it's doing there. Yeah, and I'm getting close there, so I think I can kind of check and see how that looks. There's a lot more of like this glowing kind of red situation, so I can deal with that as well. This feels a little bit bigger than I need it to be. I don't want to move the whole thing. I just want to move this one over. Okay, and the second one is done. And then on and on and on. So you see how quick it is once you get the one thing going, right? Same with the lugs. You don't want your lugs to be exactly the same because they're not. But I've got a basic shape up here like this. I've got a basic shape up here like this. I've got a darker shadow here. I've got a darker shadow here. I've got a highlight here. I've got a highlight here. They're generally in the same place. And the main difference is going to be a little bit of opacity and a little bit of a shape change. And so you build one of those, reflect it, tweak it, and you get both of them done much faster if you spend enough time on the first one.
What were the steps to making your blur not so pixelated?
So that would be Effect, Document Effect Raster Settings, and then you want to change the resolution of your Document Effect Raster Settings to 300.
Sorry, effect, document effect.
Raster Settings. Yep. Yeah.
Show how to make like that little pie section of the top brighter and
Like this part?
yeah.
Yeah, that's super easy. So let me show you this. I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to create a rectangle, okay? I'm going to make this rectangle brighter. And let's make it a little bit even brighter than that. Okay, and then here's the trick is I want this to spin in the middle. And so if I click this and then click this, I'm going to move these over like that, okay? So I kind of do that, but to get them in the middle, I'm going to do this one and then shift click a second time and just align it. And then I'm going to grab this one and then shift click a second time and align it. So now the middle of this rectangle is where it crosses. Then I'm just going to go into Effect, Blur, Radial Blur. And radial blur is kind of annoying because you don't get a preview of what it looks like. You get this like stupid thing. And so I'm just going to guess that it's that much and then see if it is. And that looks okay. But now I'm running into an issue of where this is kind of hitting a boundary. And so I'm going to go to Effect, Document Effect Raster Settings, and I'm going to increase the boundary of that effect around the object by adding to add. And so let's just go 125 and see if that gives us more, and that's good. Okay, and so then I can take this, I'm going to put it on the correct layer by moving it to the face. So I'll highlight the face and right click and arrange, send to current layer. Okay. And we'll put that on the top by pressing Command Shift right bracket, and I can just put that right in the center like this. And then I can come over, it's still just an object, and so I can come over and I can change this up. It's a little too bright, so I can saturate it a little bit. I can drop that down somewhat. There's another one that's exactly like this, but just probably lower opacity. So I'm not going to go through the steps of doing that again. I'm just going to copy paste in front and then rotate this thing like that. And then I'm going to drop my opacity down, and it'll give me that little bit that's kind of showing up here. And I might go copy paste in front and rotate this again. And this time I'll go darker. And copy paste in front on my darker version. And we'll rotate that like that. And then I've just got to knock some stuff back because it's a little bit too much. And then just clip everything. So once I have that, I don't want it to kind of escape the boundaries of the face. So I've already named my main face, and I'm going to grab that. I'm going to make a copy of that. I'm going to put that on top, and I'm going to select all of the things that I just made and press Command 7, and it clips and ruins everything. What happened?
Don't you want the effect on top of the shape?
I do, but I want the shape. I want the shape to be the clipping path. So let's go Command 7. This is, there we go. I don't know why that did that at first. And then just call this whatever you want to call it, bow tie blur or whatever. And you've got that. A little trick that'll be helpful is the more you use effects, the more your computer's going to have to render those every time you touch anything. And so I don't necessarily need this bow tie blur showing right now. And if I just turn that layer off, then my computer won't have to render it each time I move or zoom or do whatever. It just reduces the processor load. So that's how I do that. And then, I mean, I can come back in here and I can say, oh, you know what? There's some other stuff that's kind of going on from the edges of those things that I could probably start to try to get. And so since I already have this, I can get main face, right? Shift D twice, which is going to bring me over to draw inside. And then I can start doing that type of stuff. And so I can come in and I can say, give me a circle that's like this, and let's make it black, and let's do a radial gradient on the fill. Gradient, not, there it is. Radial gradient on the inside, and I'm going to go black to black, 0 to 100, flip that around, and then I can start kind of just getting that edge the way that I want it. You'll notice it's a little bit more over here, a little bit less over here, right? And so I'm just going to come in with this whole thing, and I'm gonna multiply it, drop my opacity down, and I'm looking at kind of the edges here like that, and that gives me pretty close. And then I can come in and I can start saying, you know, big black circle that's got a Gaussian blur on it. Big Gaussian blur on it. And we'll click OK. And then I can come in and sort of start adjusting that shape so that it just fits the edge where I'm seeing it. And that's actually quite small. I don't know why I made it so big. Something like that. Obviously that's in the way. And then let's multiply, drop this down just a little bit. Okay, so you can keep like kind of building things up. I've got a ring on the inside here where I've got this refraction of light and I've got this shadow that's cast. I've already got this circle. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to copy paste in front, And let's shrink that down. This is where guides would be more helpful than what I'm doing right now, but just to give you an idea, right? I can start getting closer. And this is where my blue lines are getting in my way. I'm going to Command H, which can be kind of confusing because now when you have stuff highlighted, it won't show the path, but I needed the path to go away so I can see what's going on along this edge. I can bring that back by pressing Command H again. I'm just going to increase this pretty drastically. And it looks like just on the one side, this side is not that way. And so this is where you could do one of two things. I'm going to bring this out of this shape. And I'm getting kind of into the weeds. Does anybody want me to show you anything else, or do you want me to keep going on this? You got 15 minutes. Are you guys just like, my brain is full, please, for the love of all, stop talking? Or
About your effects setting that you did, was that per document or was that instance for each effect? Like,
good question. Yeah, it's the entire document. Yeah, so anything that you do with effect, document effect, raster settings is document wide. Did you have a...
Yeah, I've had troubles with making clipping paths before. So the thing you create, like let's say it's that bow tie part, has to be on top of it.
Yeah, so let's practice clipping
Yeah,
paths.
I've struggled a few times.
Yeah,
I don't know what I
they're
did.
really useful. So just get out Illustrator, make a few shapes. It doesn't, at this point, it doesn't matter what the shapes are. I'm gonna put a couple of squares in here of different colors, and I keep coloring the wrong thing. And so we go like this. Okay, what you'll see is whichever one of these is on top is the one that will become the clipping path if you don't use draw inside. So there's two ways to get into the same type of clip group. And one way is right here, if we look, this kind of pink one is the highest shape in the selection. And so when I press Object, Clipping Mask, Make, or Command 7, that's the one that becomes the clip path. If I wanted it to be a different one, like if I wanted this one, then I would move that to the top. And then when I press Command 7, it becomes the clipping path. And let me just make it really obvious here. We'll just have one star. Okay, and so this star, which will give a really bright boundary too. So you can see our star here is on top of everything else. Okay, if I select everything, and let me get Command H back on so you can see all the stuff that's selected. The star is the one that's on top, so Command 7, it's the one that becomes the clipping path. The other way of doing it, which is the way I did it over here, is you select a single object. So I'm going to select this star, and then you go over to your toolbar and you choose Draw Inside or press Shift D twice. And if you have a single object selected when you do that, that object becomes a clipping path, and then everything that you make after that will get clipped. So let me choose a color that isn't in there. And so now every shape that I make is being clipped by the star because I did Draw Inside. But both of those will create the same type of clip group. So it just depends on if you have objects already that you want to clip, that's going to be select everything and put the one that you want to use as a clipping path on top and Command 7. If you have something and you want to start putting stuff inside of it, but nothing is clipped yet, then you would select the one thing and then Shift D twice or choose Draw Inside and then start creating shapes. And they both end up with a clip path.
So I did notice when you did not the draw inside but the other version of clipping mask, it made the star go away and just clip
Yeah.
the shapes.
Yeah, so there's two main differences. Is the Command 7 will take the object that's going to turn into your clipping path and get rid of its fill and stroke. Draw Inside keeps the fill and stroke most of the time, but if you have a stroke that is like aligned outside of the path, or it's got a profile on it, it'll get rid of the stroke. So most of the time, draw inside keeps the fill and stroke, and all of the time, Command 7 will delete the fill and the stroke of the path that becomes the clipping path. So try those two things really quick because they're going to be kind of useful. Just make a circle. Just make a circle, and then with that circle selected, Shift D twice, and then you can change your fill to something else, and then just start drawing, and you'll see that it gets clipped. And then look inside of your layers panel, and you'll see that you've got a clip group. That's one way to do it. That's the draw inside. Super useful, especially with the way that most of you are going to create your watches, where you're going to do the shapes first and then start doing highlights and shadows and details after that. You can use those big shapes as the clipping path by going Shift D twice, and then you can start putting stuff inside of it, which is also a bit of an organizational thing because it's a clip group. So everything that you create, you just name that, it's the face or the case or the hands or the tick marks or whatever, and everything will kind of go inside of that. Okay. And then the other way, just create a few shapes. Now, what's happening right now? Why is it that I'm creating these shapes and they're like disappearing?
You're inside of the.
Yeah, I'm still in draw inside. Okay, and so you got to make sure that you go back to draw normal, and then you'll stop making stuff inside of that thing.
Can you just go into another layer too? Would that work?
Yeah, as soon as you select something else, it defaults back to draw normal. Yeah, because draw inside only works when you have a single object selected. Now, the cool part about this is once I have a clip group, regardless of whether or not I've used draw inside or Command 7 to create that clip group, I can go back into it by selecting just that single clipping path shape and then go to draw inside again, and then I can start doing draw inside inside of that existing clip group. So once you have a clip group, you can still do draw inside but you can only go into draw inside with a single thing selected. So if I selected this, let me select something else. Oh, it doesn't do it anymore. Okay, so Shift D. Okay, if I select this and then I come back over here, when I click on this, it selects the entire clip group, right? And so I can't do draw inside. Draw inside is grayed out. I can't even click on it as an option. Okay, but if I select just one of those, then I can click on it and go back into draw inside. Double clicking in a blank space will get you out of draw inside and put you back in draw normal. Okay? Questions on either of those ways of getting into a clip group? I will suggest clip groups are most of the time significantly better than using the shape builder tool for this type of design because if I were to, let me show you something that I see people do wrong a lot. I go like this. Let's do a circle, right? And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to put a shadow on the inside of this, right? So I'm just going to go like another circle, and let's make it darker. Okay, and then let's blur it. Okay, so we've got our blur. As soon as I use one shape to cut the other shape, the blur starts from that edge, okay? And so you're not going to get the same effect because the blur is blurring from that edge. And often you're going to want, especially like this, you're going to want a hard edge on one side and a fuzzy edge on another side. That is a clipped object, not a cut object, because the clipping path gives you the hard edge and the blur effect gives you the fuzzy edge. But the fuzzy edge is going around the entire shape, but because you clipped it, it hides the rest of that shape, giving you a hard edge on one side and a fuzzy edge on the other side. Yeah.
When I use the shape builder tool, and let's say I have like 4 layers, and I select only 2 layers, and I use the shape builder tool to like cut something out, I feel like sometimes it just erases everything underneath, and it just appears white, and I'm like, wait, I just
sometimes that could be an artifact of how it's rendering, and it'll go away if you just Command plus, Command minus. If you just change the view a little bit, it forces Illustrator to re-render everything. Because there are times when you're moving something around where it looks like it disappears, or you're cutting something and it looks like it disappears, and Illustrator just needs to render it again. Is kind of what that sounds like.
Oh, so to render things, it's what you do?
Just move it around. Hold the space bar and kind of move it around, or zoom in and zoom out a little bit.
Oh, command plus and minus.
Yep.
Can I ask you about your workshop tonight?
Yeah, you guys should come. We're going to do some creative stuff. It'll be a good break from the watch project. One of the most analytical things you might do visually in your college career. Yeah, there are a couple exercises. I have a class that I'm not teaching this semester, but I teach most semesters called Intentional Creativity, where we go through different practices on how to live your life in a way that will allow you to generate more creative problems, creative solutions, and kind of a process by which to do that. It'll be shorter because I usually take an entire block class to teach that, but we'll go through some of that stuff. So we'll do some mindfulness breathing exercises, and then we'll do some activities on like ideation and idea generation. And so it'll be a fun time. You guys should come. It's in here at 4.
By chance, would you be able to Zoom that?
I'll ask them if they want to. Sure.
Okay,
I got my mic, so
perfect. Yeah, or even just like the audio.
yeah.
Because I really want to come to it, but I have something.
Cool. Okay. Any other questions? Anything else I can help you guys with? Yeah.
Okay, this is gonna be, I don't know how to word it. The two connecting swoop, there's 4 on each side,
These are lugs.
Yeah, how would you go about making that shape?
It's mostly a rectangle, so that's where I would start, right? And so I can do this in 4 minutes. So I'd get that and that just to get the height of that, right? And then I would come in and I'd get the width of that on the top, and then the width of that on the edge. Okay, and so then I would just go in here like this, and this is going to give me the width on the top, and then I'll move that over, and let's lower this while I hold shift. Okay, and then this is going to come down all the way over here. This is going to come down all the way over here, and this looks like it moves over a little bit and curves, and there's a bit of a curve here. I'm going to add an anchor point right there, okay? And I'm just gonna pull this over to give me that curve. I'm gonna Shift C to get my convert anchor point out. I'm holding Shift as I pull that out so it stays aligned, okay? And then I want this to stay right here. I could measure that if I wanted. It's actually right here. So I'm gonna move this anchor point up to there. And then I'm gonna add an anchor point. Let's pull this back. I'm going to add an anchor point right there so it stays. And then I'm going to move this over like that. And we can kind of round that out a little bit more. And that's going to give me this. This is a rounded corner. This is a bigger rounded corner. This is swooping down. But right about here, it stays pretty well aligned. And so I'm going to add an anchor point there. And then I can kind of pull this out. You'd use that measurement there. And this is a trick. I don't want a corner here, so I am going to pull a curve out of this, but as long as those handlebars stay parallel to the line above it, it'll just curve out the bottom. And so that'll give me that basic shape. Like that. Yep. And then I can, I did that in 2 minutes. I can keep working with this lug, or I can answer maybe 1 or 2 other questions. You guys can do it. Let me just, okay. This is what we need to do. I'm reading the room here, guys. I'm reading the room.
All of us are holding our breaths.
Everybody's like, I'm going to die. I just want to show you and tell you this. Every single one of these students knew exactly what you guys know when they started this watch. Okay? They were all successful. Every single one of them. I have never seen somebody who has put in the time and come and talk to me and ask questions in class that did poorly on this project. Most people are going to get above a B- on this project. That's an average on this is probably an A-, B+, because most people work really hard on this project. And it's really an effort thing. It's not a know-how thing. There's a couple of little tricks of using a Gaussian blur here, understanding a clipping path there, and taking the time to measure things. And after that, it's really just doing it. You guys can do it. I know you can. I've literally been doing this for 11 and a half years, and I have seen thousands of students do this project successfully, okay? So you can do it. It's very, very possible. I went a little hard. They're kind of scared. Everybody's good. You could do it, okay? If you have any other questions, stay after. I'll answer them. If not, office hours. Get as far as you can in the draft. Just get as far as you can. Get some shading started, and then Tuesday I'll give you some feedback.